when you throw a rock into a pack of dogs, the one that yelps is the one that got hit. And away we go.
It's the Wretched Radio Mail Call Delivery Bag Q&A Infotainment Nationwide Extravaganza, featuring your voicemails, correspondences, communiques, dispatches, memorandums, and missives.
Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
What we need right now is a clear message to the people of this country.
You have 1,200 messages.
That is a bit above average.
Now here's your host, Todd Freakishly Tall Friel.
The mail is here.
Ooh, this is Wretched Radio. Muchas gracias for sending questions, comments, conundrums, snarks to idea@wretched.org. I don't know what the implication of this is. Probably nothing. Where are the stories, y'all? You used to send me more articles, more world event stuff. Hello? Jimmy?
Yes.
I could be wrong, but I'm actually complaining that people aren't doing us a favor.
They're not doing your job for you.
I'll be in the repentance corner. Thank you for sending anything. Very grateful, truly. Idea@wretched.org.
All right, we start out with, well, first of all, I have a question. Do you...
Well, that you just put yourself right at the front of the queue.
I do, yes.
Did you submit this to idea@wretched.org?
I did not.
You're so privileged.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not supposed to say that.
Sorry.
Do you have a refrigerator down there?
Down where?
Next to you, because you bend over quite a bit and come up with drinks.
No, I don't. I have what is this? Costco. It's just room temp. It's Kirkland. This is tropical mango, flavored with other natural flavors. Yeah, I'll bet. No, it's just a case of beverages down there.
I got you.
Mm-hmm.
I got you. Okay. Well, Brylan has a pretty good question. He said, how do we respond, Todd, to abusive employers when they tend to single you out and make a spectacle out of you in front of the rest of the crew? My boss constantly uses God's name in vain.
Oh, that.
And seems to crank up that type of language when he knows I'm around.
Yeah. That's rough. I don't mind telling you, but there are some leads that we have in the Bible. I'm thinking about 1 Peter, I do believe, chapter 2, where we hear how a slave is supposed to respond to a bad master. I think that's reasonably analogous to this scenario, an employee and a boss. Now, before I even say it, so that somebody doesn't perceive that there's no permission for an individual to leave or to have redress, you most certainly can, and you should, if you're being treated that way. There are avenues where we can go about the business of trying to rectify bad behavior. There could be the HR department in the organization. If not, there are always outside organizations that deal with issues like this. There are attorneys that could be engaged. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't avail yourself of those things. I am saying that we do see in 1 Peter chapter 2 how we're supposed to respond when we're being mistreated by a boss. This is, that's 2 Peter. That would be different. That would probably be about false teachers. 1 Peter chapter 2, submission to masters. Servants, be submissive to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the harsh. So somebody is saying nasty things, and Peter is calling the individual to not respond in kind, to not retaliate. Vengeance is the Lord. Our witness is at stake. This is something that helps us. I think at least it should help us as we continue to enter into an era where Christians are looked at very unfavorably. When we respond poorly, it undermines the work that God is doing. He's building his church. He is expanding his territory. And he uses bad governments, bad people, so that we would respond in such a way that causes them to ask the question, what about the hope that lies within you? What is the deal with you, the way that you're responding? That's what's at stake, and that's why it can be so helpful. You've got a bad boss. I would suggest to you, because I bet this fellow, his boss knows that he's a Christian. There could be that spiritual dynamic going on. I'm not saying that you should get physically hurt or you should be abused. I'm just saying 1 Peter 2 says that we respond well to the harsh, for this is commendable if because of conscience toward God one endures grief, suffering wrongfully. So we are encouraged to respond well to bad bosses. But then in verse 21, it says, for to this you were called. This is the calling of the Christian. We have had a respite. We have had a time out in Western civilization for centuries. It's very unusual, however. We, as Christians, part of the deal is, you're going to be totally forgiven. You're going to be adopted into God's family, but you need to know it's going to come with some suffering. They hated our master. They're going to be annoyed with you too. And that's exactly what verse 21 says. For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth. When he was reviled, did not revile in return. When he suffered, he didn't threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. In other words, leave it up to the Lord to deal with your boss. Go about the business of utilizing, if you see fit, the avenues that are still provided in our society, because even as a culture, we're not nuts about the idea of really bad bosses. And you always have the option to find other employment if it gets to that point. Along the way, we're called to be like Jesus, because we're on the same mission. He was about the business of saving sinners. That's our mission too. That's the mission of the church. And so if you find yourself in these situations, whether it is a bad boss, whether it is a bad teacher, whether it is a bad government, take the avenues available for redress, but know that you are simply being treated the way that your Lord was treated. Actually, he was probably treated a whole lot worse. Because we are about our master's business. We do not revile in return. Please send your emails to idea@wretched.org. And sorry you're going through that. I got to tell you, though, Jimmy, the nasty boss business, that would be hard. The blasphemy business that he mentioned?
Yeah.
Oh, especially if the guy's doing it because he knows it gets up your nose.
Yeah, part of the another part of the email that he wrote said that he has clearly presented the gospel to his boss before, and he has no interest in it.
Yeah, well, when you throw a rock into a pack of dogs, the one that yelps is the one that got hit. I can't tell you for sure that's what's happening with your boss, but if you've shared the gospel with him and he makes it a point to blaspheme your Lord's name, there's a pretty good chance what you said to him landed in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't mean he got saved, obviously, but it does mean he knows, and you now have your testimony at stake. It is not uncommon for guys like that to test. Okay, Mr. Christian, how do you respond when I do this? And that's what's at stake here. And I think that's how we need to view all of these current contemporary annoyances. Eternity is on the line, and we get to participate in the building of God's kingdom by how we respond to emails, please, idea@wretched.org.
Okay, this one comes from Sebastian. He says, hey, Todd, I've heard you ask people when witnessing if they think they're a good person. How do we respond to someone who says they're a bad person?
Let me know when that happens, because it hasn't happened to me yet. How funny is this? How many times have you gone to a restaurant, Zaxby's, Chick-fil-A, sit down, whatever it is? And by the way, have you noticed that everybody's food is shrinking? Have you? No, I hate to.
But the prices haven't.
Even Zaxby's. The food's getting smaller. It's no less delicious, but it is a wee bit smaller. How many times do you remember the person who waited on you, whether it's at the counter or at the table? We were in a restaurant. I remember we were in Eagan, Minnesota, and I asked the young, somehow right away in the conversation, it came up, but she was taking our beverage orders. Would you consider yourself to be a good person? Oh, no. Okay, I'll be right back with your Diet Coke. She comes back after about 5 minutes and said, oh, and by the way, here's your Diet Coke, and I really am a good person. Because everybody proclaims their own goodness with their mouth. Should it happen that somebody says they're bad, okay, it could be because they have a big nasty that they're feeling really terrible about. You can address that, but expand that. Because they probably think they're bad. That thing they did was bad, but they themselves are not bad because we're all lovers of self. We all give ourselves a pass. You can use the laws to help them understand their total depravity, not just being sinful in one regard, but totally sinful, because they need to understand, well, I've got a little bit of a bad mark on my record. No, you're a bad person, and the law brings about that knowledge. So even if somebody does say it, I say, dive in a little deeper and probe with the law. This is Wretched Radio. Hey, if you would like to watch all 4 segments, not just one of Wretched Radio, you can do that at wretched.org. My sister-in-law, not very bright, named all of her kids Bible names, so there I am playing with my nephew, The Message. I'm kidding, that's not really a Bible. And that is why Samson was the best comedian in the Bible. He brought the house down. He brews his own coffee. he brews